This is our ESB 2024 player rankings, and for today, we're going to touch on the top 10 starting pitchers in all of Major League Baseball. And once again, we are doing another countdown here on Empire State of Baseball. We're nearing the end of these, and these have been a lot of fun to do with this cast of characters. But today, we are going to break down the top aces in the game, the best starting pitchers in all of the game today. And I know we're going to be kicking this list off with our 10 through 10, 9, 8. So who is touching on our 10, 9, 8? Of course, that's going to be Joe.
That's me. Listen, this list is different than it is in the last few years. You're going to see a lot of different names on this list. There's no guys like Verlander and Scherzer and DeGrom and Kershaw, guys who have been main staples of these lists in the past decade. All those guys have their own issues at the moment. There's so many new names on this list. So we'll start off with number 10 here. And that is the pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays, Kevin Gausman, the big free agent sign-in that they brought in. I think it was a 7 or 6 year deal that they brought him in for. Guys had a 3.16 ERA last season. In his last 3 seasons, has had a 3.10 ERA and over 500 innings, a model of consistency since he came over from San Francisco. Number 9 is Max Fried of the Atlanta Braves. And it seems like the only thing that keeps Max Fried from being higher on this list is the fact that he missed about half the season last year. Still productive when he pitched, 8-1, 2.55 ERA, but he's going to be on this list at 9, and with an asterisk that he can move up a lot higher on this list. He is also the premier free agent pitcher on the market next year. Luis Castillo clocks in at number 8. The former Cincinnati Red, now Seattle Mariner, had a great year last year, 14-9, 3.34 ERA for the Seattle Mariners. He signed a big deal with them, another 5-year deal as well. And he has just begun to show Seattle what he can do on a regular basis. So we'll start off with number 10. And who's got Mr. Gausman?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely want to touch on Gausman too for a little bit here, because really the biggest thing with Gausman too, while he doesn't have the sexy numbers of like those low 2 ERAs, the thing with Gausman is he's going to be out there every 5th day, take the ball, and give you a quality outing. And if you're looking at his stat line way back to when he actually started to be a regular in the rotation, that was right around 2016. Granted, he came up in 13, split some time between the bullpen rotation. But from 2016 onwards, outside of that COVID-shortened season, he's pitched 30-plus games in each of those seasons. So you love to see the consistent health and just quality numbers throughout his career. I think this is a very nice guy to round out the top 10.
I'm going to touch on Max Fried here a little bit. And one thing I did want to mention about him, he is an absolute athlete on the mound. Joe had mentioned he was hurt last year, but 2020, 2021, 2022, Gold Glove in all 3 of those years. And I think having a good defensive pitcher is always a fun thing to see. A lot of times, especially nowadays, we see these just big, lumbering pitchers who just throw hard. Fried's out there, can field his position as well. Not a huge strikeout guy. So he's really kind of crafty out there on the mound. And Joe mentioned also an impending free agent this year, a lefty. I think there's going to be a lot of teams interested in him. And so it'll be interesting to see how his season ends up. Do the Braves keep him? Does he go sign big money elsewhere? We'll have to figure that out in the offseason.
And I will touch on Luis Castillo. And for those of you who tuned in to our MLB predictions episode for episode number 76, this was my prediction for the AL Cy Young Award winner in 2024. And I believe Thomas as well. Both Tom and I had Luis Castillo winning this award for the 2024 season. I've had conversations on the show and even offline with Joe where I truly believe the Seattle Mariners have the best rotation in all of baseball. So Castillo on this list. I'll be curious to see if some of his teammates, as in George Kirby and Logan Gilbert, might join this top 10 as well. But we are going to move it along to the next set of players, and with our next set, we will go to Thomas.
Yeah. So at number 7, we have probably the most boring person on this list, and that's Logan Webb. And I say that because Logan Webb is a very, very good pitcher. He led the league in innings last year. He struck out just under 200 guys. He just doesn't seem to. There's not a lot of what you would say is like special things about him, but he goes out there and he gets outs. And at the end of the day, you want someone who's gonna give you innings. He had 33 games. He started last year, 32 the year before that. Striking out a decent amount of guys. Just a very solid pitcher. So we have him at the 7 spot. At 6, we have Houston Astros ace. At this point, Framber Valdez. Last year for most of the season was really neck and neck with Garrett Cole for Cy Young. Cole pulled ahead at the end. We'll get to him in just a second here. But Framber, kind of the opposite of Logan Webb. A lot of fun, a lot of excitement on the mound. Striking out, he had struck out 200 guys last year. He had the no-hitter last year. So some very high highs with Framber. So we have him at the 6th spot. And then the biggest asterisk, what's he doing here on the list is number 5, we have Garrett Cole. And Garrett Cole, as of a couple weeks ago, was our unanimous number 1 as the reigning AL Cy Young winner. But this year, we don't know how long he's going to pitch. He's out at least 1 to 2 months. So he could be back in May. He could be back in June. We could not see Garrett Cole this year. So we had a hard time figuring out where to put him on the list because we do think he is the best pitcher in baseball at this point. And we settled on, if you get 2 months missing out of Garrett Cole, if you get him back June 1st, we still think he could be the 5th best pitcher in Major League Baseball this year. Huge strikeout guy, has been a big he's been an Iron Man at the position. He's throwing a ton of innings past few years. Again, it's a stellar Cy Young season last year, and we are just hoping and praying, at least Rich and I, that he and his elbow are feeling good, and he'll be back early summer this year for the Yanks.
And you said it right there, and I think with Garrett Cole, it's definitely been progressing. I feel like in a good way. At least the Yankees talked to Garrett Cole. There was a Yes Network interview between Meredith and Garrett looked like he was in good spirits, and he looked like all right, well, I'm hanging out for the month of April, and then I'm ready to go come May. There is still mystery on how long Garrett could end up being out for. You hope that everything works out when the recovery time and his throwing program resumes. But right now, I think this 5 spot is a fair spot to put Garrett Cole in at this point. As Tom mentioned before, this guy was our unanimous number 1 about a couple of weeks ago until the news broke, and then we had to switch gears on this list. But he is at number 5. He could have the potential to move up the list. He could have the potential to move down, depending on how he's missing. But at this current moment, we have him right there in the middle at the number 5 spot.
Yeah, and I'll touch on Logan Webb here at the 7 spot right now for the San Francisco Giants. Listen, Webb is kind of an old school pitcher in today's day and age. 216 innings last year, even had 2 complete games. Not a high strikeout pitcher, although he did add 194 last year, but a big control guy, led the league in strikeouts per walk with 6.26 strikeouts per walk, only 31 walks the entire season. So Webb is kind of an old school control innings eaten pitcher that's going to give you around a 3 ERA, and he's going to anchor that San Francisco rotation. He is perfectly made for that ballpark, I think. And, he's a guy that any team would love to have right now. In the last 2 seasons, he's pitched 192 innings and, like I said, 216 last year. So he's going to continue to do that as long as he stays healthy. And that's exactly what you want from your ace pitcher right now.
Yeah, and listen, when it comes to pitching, you cannot control how many runs your team may score, but you have full control of how many runs the opposing team scores against you. And Framber Valdez, I mean, he's the definition of a quality start and just controlling the game on the mound. He actually owns the MLB single season record for most consecutive quality starts of 25, breaking DeGrom's 24 in a row back in 2018. Bob Gibson has the overall record, but again, don't forget it spanned across 2 seasons. Framber has the individual season record. I just trust Framber to go out there, do his job, and any given night, and we saw it one night last year, he could go out and dominate and throw a no-hitter.
All right, Corey Favs, on that note, why don't you take our next 3 here on the countdown?
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, pitching wins championships, and here are 3 ace pitchers belonging to teams with serious World Series aspirations. Zach Wheeler taking the number 4 spot on the Phillies. Again, former Met, has been with the Phillies for the last few years, and it really has been a solid pitcher. Again, 13 wins last year, 3.61 ERA, so the ERA took a little bit of a step back. But this is a high strikeout guy, too. 212 strikeouts last year, 247 just a few years ago when he did finish second overall in Cy Young. So Zach Wheeler, phenomenal pick. I know a lot of people on this call did pick Zach Wheeler to win the NL Cy Young, but I was the only one to pick Spencer Strider to win the NL Cy Young, and that is our number 3 spot on the list. I mean, Spencer Strider so far in spring training looks absolutely filthy, and I think he's going to deliver even more in the coming 2024 regular season for the potentially World Series bound Braves. And then number 2 is Zach Allen. Zach Allen had a great year last year for the Diamondbacks. How about that Diamondbacks year in general? And a big part of that was because of getting good quality pitching. And Zach Allen, 17 wins last year with the D-backs, 3.47 ERA, finished 3rd in the Cy Young voting, and got an all-star appearance there. So Zach Allen, this is another guy. All 3 of these pitchers have potential to win a Cy Young award in the National League. All 3 of these pitchers have a legitimate chance to add a World Series ring to their collection.
Absolutely. And on Zach Wheeler's note, now for Zach, he had a little bit of an uptick in his ERA, 3.61 last year, won a Gold Glove, and finished 6th in the Cy Young Award voting. And Zach was going to be one of those prestigious free agents come the 2024-2025 offseason. Joe mentioned before, Max Fried's going to top that list. And if it wasn't for Zach Wheeler pending an extension this early into the year, Wheeler would probably be the headline guy for the free agent class. But Zach Wheeler staying with the Philadelphia Phillies. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was what was it, a 4-year deal that Zach staying put? 5-year deal, I think. I don't know, something like that. I don't have it up.
Zach got paid.
Staying put with the Philadelphia Phillies over the next few years. And let's talk more on Corey's pick there, and Spencer Strider.
Yeah, so Spencer Strider of the Atlanta Braves. Listen, when you talk flamethrower, this is what Spencer Strider is. He is an old school Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, straight up flamethrower. That's who he is. 281 strikeouts in 186 innings. Led the league in strikeouts per 9 with 13.5 strikeouts per 9 last year. ERA did inflate, 3.86 ERA after the 2.67 ERA in 20 starts the year before. Listen, you see the potential there. You see what he can become. Hasn't given up a run in spring training this year, over 5 starts and 18 innings. But at the same time, sometimes hurt with the home run ball, sometimes hurt with the walks. He had 58 of them last year. So it is a guy, if he can control himself on the mound, if he can deliver that consistency, he can win Cy Youngs. He can lead the league. He can strike out 300-plus guys in a season. So this is a guy to look out for. He could be number 1 next year.
And I'm going to touch on Gallen in a second here, but I think one thing Strider has to watch out for this year is he wears those pants really tight, and with the whole like see-through Nike pants this year, I think there could be some real issues going on in Atlanta. I think Spencer might need he might need to wear something else underneath those, because my Lanta, those are some tight pants. But speaking about tight ERAs, let's get to Zach Gallen here. And Zach Gallen, I felt like, was every baseball nerd's darling in 2022. He had such a good year. He led the league in WHIP. I got some Cy Young votings. A bit kind of came out of nowhere. And then last year, ironically, almost had a in some ways better, some ways worse year. He did strike out more guys, but his ERA jumped almost an entire point. But ended up third in the Cy Young voting. So just kind of interesting to see how that broke out. Definitely the ace of that Arizona team that got to the World Series. And it's going to be interesting this year. I think, again, out of 2022 is kind of like the darling, the break, guy everyone could see like what's he going to do next. But now with the Diamondbacks being the reigning NL champions, you wonder if they're going to have more of a target on their back. And how he's going to be able to respond, and if he's going to be able to actually wrangle one of those Cy Young awards away. Probably this is most likely the top 3 in NL Cy Young voting this year. It really could be Gallen, Strider, and Wheeler fighting for it, especially after the number 1 guy has moved from the NL.
That's absolutely correct. So we're gonna have to hold on to this this image right here, because this could be possibly a prediction for what the NL Cy Young finalist list. So great call there, Thomas. And by the way, I butchered the Zach Wheeler extension. It was a 3-year, $126 million deal. He's making $42 million per year now with the Phillies. All righty. Well, it's now time to reveal our number 1. And as Tom alluded to, this was a pitcher who dominated the National League, specifically in the NL Central. And he will be our number 1 guy here. But on the flip side, for the American League, and it is Corbin Burnes. And Corbin Burnes in our number 1 spot for starting pitchers ahead of the 2024 season. For Corbin Burnes, the former Cy Young Award winner, finished 8th in the voting last year, sported a 3.39 ERA, and that's an 193 2/3 innings pitch, which is the second most innings of his career, to his 202 in 2022. 200 Ks. He's been 200 Ks, 243, 234 over the last 3 seasons. So a strikeout machine, a consistent top frontline guy. And for the Baltimore Orioles, much needed. This is the piece they needed for their team. And I think last year with the young core they have in offensive players, they needed that true ace in their rotation. And Corbin Burnes is that guy, and he's going to be a big impactful player for them because they lost one of their big time pitchers in Kyle Bradish as well. But Joe, let's talk more about Corbin Burnes. Why not?
Yeah, and I think the thing that puts Corbin Burnes at the top of this list is consistency. He has been that guy the last 3 seasons, a 2.94 ERA over the last 3 full seasons for him. More importantly, the WHIP is phenomenal. Led the league in WHIP with 1.069 last year, where walks and hits were up. Last 3 seasons, a WHIP below 1.994, and an ERA plus of 1.41. So when you're talking about the best pitchers now, and you don't have those surefire 100% Hall of Famers that we've had in the last few years, this is the guy who has been the most consistent. This guy is always there for them, for the Brewers, now hopefully the same for the Baltimore Orioles, and can be that number 1 ace for them. So Corbin Burnes, number 1.
Yeah, and the big thing with the Orioles right now, if you're an Orioles fan, what an exciting time now after going through basically half a decade of really bad baseball, really bad contracts, just consistent ineptitude after having a decent run in the middle teens. But Corbin Burnes, now the biggest thing with that team, the team has so much young talent and so much exciting on the offensive side. The question was, is the pitching really going to handcuff them from taking that next step from a playoff contender to a World Series contender? You can't really do much better than Burnes, so they really lucked out there. Wrote a good deal for the Orioles.
An interesting thing with our list this year as we cap off with Corbin Burnes, only 2 guys on this list have won a Cy Young, and I think that's really what put Burnes and before Cole at the top of the list. Was these are a bunch of guys who you could see winning Cy Youngs. Corbin Burnes actually has won one. It's going to be interesting for him this year is he's coming from the second worst division in baseball in the NL Central, which has just been pretty horrendous for the past decade plus. And he's going into what is always known as one of the hardest divisions to pitch in, not just because of the lineups, but because of the ballparks. So it's really interesting to see how does Corbin Burns kind of come into the AL now, being a big strikeout guy. That should help him keep. There's no better way of keeping the ball in the ballpark than making sure the guy can't hit it. So it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to being in Baltimore. Again, we said they needed an ace with how good that lineup is. He's gonna be that ace for them. And number one on the list as a guy who has done it.
Do you guys remember who was number one on our list last year? Hint, he's not on the current top 10.
Sure.
Verlander?
No.
Verlander was hurt going into the year.
He was an NL East guy, and it was Sandy Alcantara, who was
Oh,
the award
yes.
winner going
Yeah,
in.
talk
He
about a
didn't
fall.
even crack our top 10, but he'll also be missing the entire 2024 season
Correct.
recovering from surgery. So that is it. So Corbin Burns tops our list in the 10, and another 10 are done. We are getting closer and closer to the final top 10 countdown. So we will leave you off with, of course, our top 10 starting pitchers for Major League Baseball heading into 2024. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Empire State of Baseball. Take care.